Hello and welcome back. We are still talking about Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe, and our topic today, I think, will be tradition versus change. This is a big topic throughout the book because the coming of colonizers, the coming of new cultures and new religions, of course, bring great change to the people of Umuofia. And a large part of the book is about how you deal with that kind of change. Do you adapt to it? Do you resist it? Do you fight against it? What do you do? So part of what I'm interested in is, first of all, that first part of the book where Achebe presents us with Umuofia and its culture, and how he presents it to us, and what he wants us to feel as we read the book. He gives us a lot of examples of traditional Umuofian, traditional Igbo culture, right? I'm not going to go over all of them because there's a lot, and you may as well just read the book. So there are a few that I kind of want to touch on that I thought were pretty interesting. One of them was the oracle. So the character of Cielo, who is the oracle of the village, she talks to the gods. And she's an interesting person because, in ordinary times, she's just Cielo. She's a lovely lady. She's very nice. But when she becomes the oracle, the spokesperson for the gods, she is terrifying and authoritative. And this woman has the power to heal, to bring people together, to tell the village what to do in many cases. And she shows up and she does some really interesting things, like when little Ezinma is very, very sick, it's Cielo who comes to heal her, and who finds out that, in fact, Ezinma was a spirit child who is reborn over and over again so as to punish her mother, which is horrifying. But it was Cielo, the oracle, who was able to kind of get past that and figure out how to solve it. She's the one who decreed that it was time to take Ikemefuna out to the jungle and kill him. So the oracle is, there's various loci of authority in Umuofia. One, of course, being kind of the elders of the village, the men of the village. But then there is, of course, the oracle herself, who speaks for the gods. And these are sometimes in conflict and sometimes together. But it's a neat little aspect of how the spiritual nature of Umuofia is strong enough that it can direct a lot of what happens in the village. Speaking of which, another one, and one of my favorite parts of the book, are the Egwugwu. Now, the Egwugwu are these spirits, and the way that they're presented to us is, they live in a small hut, a small shed in kind of the town center, the Ilo, and during special occasions, the Egwugwu come out. And they are these sort of dramatically costumed creatures, all in raffia and beads and feathers. One of them, their leader, this guy, Evil Forest, has a hat with smoke coming out of it, all that really cool stuff. And the Egwugwu are there to pass judgment on the town. They are there to settle disputes. They are the spiritual authorities. And what's interesting is that the people of Umuofia are doing a kind of suspension of disbelief, right? So when they're there and when the festival is going on, the Egwugwu are those spirits. They are those people, those entities that govern from beyond the world of man. However, we know that they are men in costumes. And in fact, there's one point where I think one of Okonkwo's wives kind of notices that one of the Egwugwu has a particular spring in his step that indicates that it's Okonkwo in costume. But nevertheless, the people of Umuofia look to the Egwugwu for advice and for authority and for judgment, and they are extraordinarily important, so much so that they become kind of a special plot point later on, which we'll get to. There's a lot of seasonal festivals in the town. There's repairing of the walls of the compound. There are the locusts. At one point, locusts come, and apparently this is an annual event. And people gather them up and roast them and eat them. And it's probable that the locusts are also a symbol for the oncoming colonists. But we'll see. There are weddings. There are funerals. There is the week of rest, or the week of peace, I should say, where you're not supposed to harm anybody. And of course, Okonkwo beats his wife because that's what Okonkwo does. And he ruins all of that for everybody. So it's kind of fun to see all the little holidays that are going on and the way people celebrate and have feasts and bring people together. And of course, the way people like Okonkwo screw it up because he has no time for holidays. He's a man of action. We'll get to you, Okonkwo, in that regard at some point. Not everything is great, at least from my opinion. And I fully acknowledge that I am not of the culture and certainly not of the time, but there are a few things that I thought were not great customs. For example, the killing of Ikemefuna, right? The ceremonial death that really did not need to happen. Ikemefuna was a fine boy. He would have made, I think, a really good addition to the society of Umuofia. He was there. He was with it. He was calling Okonkwo father, but because tradition is what tradition is, he needed to be killed. And that ended up being very bad for everybody. Another thing that is a tradition is the tradition of twin burial. So when a woman has twins are extraordinarily bad luck. And so twins are basically put in these ceramic pots and left in the evil forest to die. And I find that horrifying, personally. But that is a tradition and a custom as well. So Achebe is spending a lot of time at the beginning of the book making sure that we, the readers, have a good sense, a good understanding of what it's like to live in this Igbo village. What kind of things are important to them? How do they go about their everyday lives? How do they go about their special holidays? And I think because, as we mentioned before, this book is written to a foreign audience, to an English-speaking audience, it's kind of like Achebe is trying to say, hey, look, we're not all just a bunch of spear-shaking savages. We have customs and traditions that are just as important and deep and significant to us as your customs are to you, right? We live by this, and we have lived by this for countless generations. And so to those of us in the West who don't really know, or Europe and the West who don't really know much about African traditions, this is Achebe kind of laying those out for us. And of course, we need to enjoy them. We need to like them because they are going to be kind of taken away when the colonists come, or the colonizers. So that brings us to the idea of change, right? So the missionaries come, the colonizers come, and they start to shake stuff up. When the missionaries come, for example, one of the first things they do is they say, hey, can we build a church in your space? And the people of Umuofia are like, ha, we got you. Yeah. Oh, yes, sure. You can build a church in the evil forest. And they think, of course, the spirits of the evil forest are going to just utterly destroy them. So the missionaries go, they clear some land, they build a church. And guess what? The evil spirits don't destroy them. The evil spirits don't seem to mind that they're there at all. And that kind of helps them start to gain converts, right? And people start to convert. And as people start to convert, they begin to ask, well, wait a minute, why should we value these old traditions that we have? We are new. We are Christians now. We don't follow the old traditions that we had. Of what value are they? And because missionary Christianity and evangelical Christianity kind of rests on the need to bring in more followers, to convert people, and there is, in theory, kind of a spiritual reason for this, right? They're saving them from hell, in a sense. So these new converts begin to get very, very excited about their conversion, about their new religion, try to convert more people. Some of them go a little bit too far. One person kills the sacred python, which again is kind of another sort of god entity of the village. And that causes a whole thing. It was wild. But yeah, as we see the Christians beginning to convert people and bring them in, and then of course, like I said at the first video, with all these conversions comes strife and difficulty. So the mercenaries, the missionaries will write back home and say, hey, things are going fine here, but we need protection. And so the governor general shows up and some soldiers show up and they start to recruit from surrounding villages. And more change. The changes begin to snowball. And suddenly all of these old traditions that have been so important for unknown how many years in a single generation are gone or changed for good. And the characters who are least capable of adapting to that change, for example, Okonkwo, cannot survive the changes. They cannot get past what has happened to their town and to their people. And they would, in Okonkwo's case anyway, he would rather die than see all of this be different. There are other characters like Obierika, who's a little more flexible. He understands what's going on. And he doesn't, as far as I remember, he doesn't convert, but he is one of those people who is able to try and weather the changes. And he's trying to hold on, keep that spot in the middle. And then, of course, there's Noye, Okonkwo's son, who converts to Christianity and just leaves his family. Leaves his father, anyway. I think he probably still has a place in his heart for the rest of his family, but certainly not for Okonkwo. So Achebe is laying out all of these changes and moments of change and where people have a chance to discuss. There's a wonderful conversation where Mr. Brown, who's the head of the missionaries, is talking to a high-ranking member of the village, and they are discussing theology. They're talking about what are gods, and the villagers, he's like, yeah, my God is the God, and we talk to his servants, and we ask them for help, and the missionary's like, no, your gods aren't real. Your God is a piece of wood that you hung up on the wall. He's like, well, yeah, it's a piece of wood, but our great God gave us the piece of wood, and so yada yada, and didn't say yada yada. But you get my point, right? There's a very nice, very civil conversation that goes on between them, which is a really neat one, but that civility breaks down pretty quickly when people who are willing to have the conversations are forced to leave. So it does kind of raise the question of the future. What is the future of the Igbo people? And the book doesn't really cover that. The book gets us to the end where Okonkwo is being cut down from the tree, where the governor is saying, oh yes, that man will make a nice paragraph in my book. And we are left to wonder what will happen. Now, I do know that this book, there are more books that follow after this. I have not read them yet. I would like to. It's one of those things that I would like to do because I like this book so much. But it doesn't really give us a very hopeful idea of what's going to happen to these people and what's going to happen to this region. And then, of course, sitting here from the 21st century, I know full well nothing good is going to happen, at least not for a very long time. The Igbo people are going to be colonized. They are going to be changed, whether they want to be or not. And not all of those changes are very pleasant or very good. And, Nigeria, as an invented country in any sense, will go through a great deal of turmoil. And it is still, I believe it is still kind of working on ironing out the problems that centuries of colonization caused. So when you read the book, it is Achebe asking you, I think, it's Achebe asking you to examine your cultures and your traditions and to look into what has value and what doesn't, but also to ask, what are you willing to give up in the name of change? And even when you don't have much say over it, and what would you hold on to for dear life? What is it that you would rather die than change for? And I think those are some interesting questions as well. So that's kind of about it for this one, I think. A little short, but that's okay. We can do short. That's fine. So if you've read this and you have some thoughts on some of these cultures and traditions, if there was maybe a favorite aspect of Igbo tradition that you really enjoyed from the book, put it in the comments. I'd love to hear about it. It would be great, as always, of course. So do me a favor and click the subby sub button so that you know when the next one comes out, because of course there's another one. We got more in the series. And so, yeah, keep an eye out, and I will talk to you later in the next video. Have a good one.